My name is Stephanie Lester. I'm the director of Study Abroad here. I've been on campus for about 15 years now, which is amazing, and seen a lot of change with the campus overall and with Study Abroad specifically. And I'm going to turn it over to Kevanne, and she'll introduce herself to start.
Hi, I'm Kevanne Monkhouse. I'm the Assistant Director of Study Abroad. I've been in this role for almost 2 years now, but I also did my master's here on campus in Spanish, so I'm very familiar. But yeah, today we're going to be talking about developing a study abroad program, so some of the different processes and resources that are available for that. But first, we kind of wanted to give you all a sense of study abroad trends here on campus. So actually, recently we've been celebrating because between the 14 and 15 and 15 and 16 academic year, we've seen a 20% increase in study abroad participation, which is great. Yeah.
Thank you for celebrating. It's a big deal for us.
Yeah. And that actually doesn't even include students who do non-credit experiences, so there are even more that kind of fall outside of those numbers. Typically, most of our students are studying abroad on short-term faculty-led programs, so about 92% of them actually. And we actually recently got the number that for the students graduating this academic year, 9.5% of them have studied abroad, which is up from about 8.5% from last academic year. So that's also some growth that we're experiencing.
I might just mention, in case you're curious, it's about 10% of nationally American students have studied abroad by the time they graduate. So to be that close, it's the closest we've ever been. So last year we were 8.5%. Pretty consistently for many years before that we were at 6.5%. So this is a big step for us.
And we were also recently able to extract some data showing study abroad participation by school, which is something we really wanted to be able to do for a long time. Maybe to create some friendly competition between the schools here on campus. But as you can see, business, liberal arts, and science are leading the pack. Liberal arts probably isn't a huge surprise. Business as well, they have a lot of structure and support there to provide those opportunities for business students. And then science, pre-med and the health professions are a large part of what's going on in the School of Science, so there are a lot of health-related programs out there for those students to take advantage of.
Are these the undergraduate or graduate or both?
Should be both, yeah. And I should note, as you can see the little asterisk, we've counted students with multiple majors multiple times. So the actual total number of students who study abroad was 531, yeah. So there you can see how the double majors kind of affect the total number. Anything else you want to add about this information? Okay. And we also have another chart showing how many programs are offered by each school. I wouldn't say this is a super exact number because I've tried to calculate it based on which programs are active. So there may be programs that are not currently active but could be in the future. But this is the best number I can give you. And there are a couple of programs that actually have multiple schools administering them, so those are counted multiple times here as well. But it's interesting to see that engineering kind of jumped higher up in the list because they actually have several different programs offered. And then, of course, liberal arts, I think, is probably the first school that people would think of connecting it to study abroad, and that one's the leader here. So pretty interesting to just kind of give you a sense of what's happening at IUPUI in terms of study abroad participation and program offerings. So with that, just to give you that background, I'm going to pass it off to Stephanie so she can talk about one of the resources we have for developing a study abroad program.
Yeah, so, well, maybe before I go, does anybody have any questions about IUPUI students going abroad as you're thinking about maybe being interested in creating your own program? Do you have any questions about what students are already doing or where there are gaps? Gaps. Well, I'll say this is my little soapbox, but I'll say one of the biggest gaps that I see is the lack of study abroad options within the Gen Ed core. this, I think, is a huge gap and honestly a big lost opportunity when we think about making study abroad accessible within the curriculum for all undergraduate students. And I think there's a lot of opportunity there. This is something that I've been, the story I've been telling all over campus, and to get people to think about this and how what they're doing and what their school is doing within the Gen Ed core and how study abroad can fit in. And when we think about one area of the Gen Ed core is understanding society and culture, right? So study abroad, surely we should be able to fit it in there. So of the over 200 Gen Ed core courses on the approved list, does anybody want to take a guess of how many of them can be completed on an IUPUI faculty-led study abroad program, which is what about 90% of the IUPUI students do when they go abroad? Anybody want to take a guess? Over 200 courses, right? How many? Zero? There are six. Six. All of them are language courses. There are 4 Mandarin and 2 French. So, yeah, there's a lot of opportunity there. So I'll plant that seed as we move on to the next piece. So in your folder, there is this, I don't know what we'll call this, it's this turquoise, maybe, paper. This is the Study Abroad Taxonomy. This is something that Kevanne and I created about a year ago and have made some modifications over the last few months. Many of you are probably familiar with the taxonomy process, and this is something that came out of the RISE initiative, and all of the high-impact practices across campus were encouraged to create these taxonomies. And we don't have enough time to go into a lot of detail, but just to kind of give you a sense of how this tool is to be used, and a quick couple of things I want you to think about, since hopefully some of you are actually thinking about how can I create a study abroad program. So this is meant to be a design tool. So as you're thinking about developing a program, what are the elements? What are the things that our office, International Affairs, think are essential to incorporate into the design? So first of all, the taxonomy is broken on the far right side. You'll see a list of attributes. So these are those key elements. And then you have high impact, higher impact, highest impact. So these, high impact is good, solid program design. This is the minimum of what we would want. This is good. And then as you move over to the left, it's kind of even better. So kind of deeper, richer. So that's just a little bit of what that tool is structured. So when you look at the kind of attributes, I just want to highlight a couple of attributes. Cultural expertise. So when we think about you all as program leaders or possible program leaders, what places do you know, what cultures are you familiar with, or that you could become familiar with? Is there a place that you have research contacts that you could partner with them and tap into their cultural expertise to design a program that is embedded within that culture and have kind of the appropriate level of knowledge and support to do that. Immersion, we want students, of course, to be immersed in the location. We want them to be connected with the people in the local community, with the academic community, but also the community outside of that. So thinking about how do you design a program where students are going to have that experience. Most of our programs, or most of our students, as I mentioned, are going on faculty-led programs. So that's an IUPUI faculty member or two taking, 8 to, we'll say, 25 students abroad. But even though they may be in this cohort, we don't want them to just stay together as an American group, right? We want them to get out and engage with the local community. So thinking about that. Intercultural learning. So of course, we want there to be specific disciplinary learning based on your academic areas, and that is going to be, the main maybe points of the syllabus. But in addition to that, we want there to be intentionally intercultural learning. So thinking about that as you're designing the learning outcomes for your course, how to make sure that you're tapping into the richness of that local environment to enhance the learning that will come out of that class. We don't want, just to take the class as it's taught here and just replicate it abroad, right? If you're doing that, you're losing the opportunity to really get the most out of that international context. And duration. So duration is something that there has been a lot of discussion and debate within the field of education abroad as we think about how short is too short, how long does an experience need to be meaningful. And I think it's important to think about length and what that means for a student experience, but it's not the defining piece that makes an experience meaningful or not, right? It's how we design an experience. We know that our students struggle to leave campus for a full semester or a full year. So how do we make the experience meaningful if students are going to be abroad for 1 week, 2 weeks, 4 weeks? How do we build that? And as we've seen, spring break programs have really increased in popularity. 5 years ago, I don't even think we had one credit-bearing spring break program. Now, this past spring break, I think we had 13 programs that ran. And with banded tuition, we expect that there'll be even more interest from students in being able to add a study abroad course for a spring semester and have the tuition included in that banded tuition. The other thing with spring break is that you have an opportunity to have a full semester of coursework leading up to an international experience, an intensive 8-9 day experience, and then the rest of the semester to kind of unpack and further that learning. So length can be used, we have to use it to our advantage and recognize what students are interested in or able to do. That being said, we want students to go abroad for as long as they can. And we have on campus a handful of longer-term semester and academic year exchange programs, but also students have the opportunity to go on full semester and year programs through the Office of Overseas Study in Bloomington. So they have a full complement of programs to choose from. I don't want you to think we're kind of pushing short-term only options. Yeah. There's a lot of other richness in the taxonomy, so I encourage you to look through it. It is a living document, so if you have thoughts or feedback, we would welcome comments as we continue to revise it and make it a useful tool for program directors. I'm going to mention quickly the Overseas Study Advisory Council. This is the committee within the IU system that approves all international student experiences facilitated by IU. So this is a really important committee. It's made up of faculty from throughout the IU system. These are people that really care about education abroad. They really want students to go abroad. So they're not meant to be the gatekeepers. They want to help program directors build the best experience that they can. So they do offer a lot of suggestions and feedback. But there is also this formal approval process. So this is the committee, and their approval process is the process by which IU takes legal responsibility for these international experiences. So there is a formal proposal process that really has all of the elements that you would need to have considered to have a successful program abroad. Where will they stay? Where will you eat? What is the syllabus? All of those kinds of elements. Ideally, you would be starting this process a year to a year and a half ahead of time, right? So as you're thinking about designing a course and laying the groundwork for all of that. It can be done more quickly, but to be comfortable, you have that 12 or 18 months. We really want the programs to be approved before the start of the academic year, because not only do you have to create the experience and get it approved for the process, but you need to recruit the students, right? So you need time to be able to recruit and get students to apply and all of that. One thing I just wanted to mention quickly is this idea of a program provider. more and more of the IUPUI Study Abroad programs are identifying what we call a program provider, kind of like a travel agency that's managing a lot of the logistics for the program leaders. So it's a lot of work, as you can imagine, right? Finding the hotel, signing the contracts, and figuring out the logistics of getting from point A to point B. So there are a growing number of these program providers that can manage those pieces for you so that you're able to really focus on the educational aspects of the program. So that might be something to think about as well. Yeah.
That would be those people and providers, like help booking hotels and tickets for students.
Right, exactly. They manage that stuff. Yeah. Yeah, and plane tickets, most IUPUI programs have students actually purchase their own tickets with very clear guidance of when you need to arrive and that kind of thing. We see, especially programs that are over the summer, is that students want to go early or stay late because they're buying a ticket to Europe or Asia or wherever they're going. But yeah, so those program providers can manage all of that. And what we're also seeing is that some schools are actively encouraging their program directors to use a program provider because it's a lot easier to manage financially as well, right? So there isn't this invoice and that invoice and this receipt, but having all of that grouped into one big invoice that can be paid. So some of the school management kind of pieces appreciate the simplicity of that. And then the other thing is that program providers will typically have a safety and security kind of element as well. So in addition to managing the logistics, you'll have somebody assigned to your group. So if something happens, you have a support person on the ground that is able to kind of step in and help facilitate the response, which we're always concerned about health and safety. So what do you think about? Good. And last thing before I turn it back to Kevin, I just want to mention there are a couple of grant opportunities to support program development. So the Office of the Vice President for International Affairs has short-term faculty development program grants up to $3,000 and the RISE course development grants up to $2,500. November and February deadlines for OBPIA, and then February for the course of the RISE grants. We also know that student funding is an important piece, and our office right now has about $70,000 that we award, which is not nearly enough. And we're actively working with the IU Foundation to identify additional sources. And many of the schools have funding opportunities as well, but we recognize that student funding is an important piece.
So as Stephanie kind of described, the program creation process, I'm going to talk about some of the services our office can provide, once the program exists, and we can help you manage the program. So the first, you guys have the yellow sheet, kind of outlining all of the services that our office can provide. I'm going to highlight just a few of them with you today. So the first that I want to focus on is the promotion and recruitment kind of. Number 3 on the yellow sheet. So the first part of the promotion, which is something kind of new in our office, is our team of outreach ambassadors. So this is the 17, 18-year will be our second year having this. And it's a team of 6 undergrad students. It doesn't necessarily have to be undergrad, but it has been so far. We kind of assign them 2 to 3 IUPUI schools, and they're tasked, with the broad goals of increasing study abroad awareness and participation, campus-wide, but more focused within those schools, and kind of helping support the school's study abroad efforts as well. So they can attend or create school or program-specific events. They can also help you develop marketing materials to promote your program and support any efforts with recruiting students. So they may, help you hold an information session or a call-out meeting. So those are the types of things that they would be available for as a resource to you as potential program directors. Another thing I'd like to highlight is the application process and required paperwork. So we have a system called iAbroad that actually most programs use in some way, shape, or form. Actually, all programs have to use it in some way, shape, or form. But it's a really great tool. It's available to use for your application process, so you would not have to, develop paper or online forms for your students to fill out. We have those all created. We have the standard forms that are required of all IUPUI students who study abroad. We have required forms on the application stage as well as the pre-departure stage. But we can also customize any additional forms for specific information that you would like to collect that is more relevant to your program. So there's a lot of flexibility and capability within the system. Once the students have applied, you also have dossiers that you can review as you're making your selection decisions. Our office can be actively involved in that as well. If you don't want to do one deadline and then review all the applications, you could also do a rolling admissions process as well. And yes, when the students submit their pre-departure forms, we're collecting information like a copy of their passport, a copy of their visa if they need one, their emergency contact information. We're also communicating a lot of important information for them to know regarding health and safety and travel planning and things like that. So it's a very useful system, and it's a great resource for you if you create a program. Another service that I'd like to highlight, Stephanie kind of alluded to it earlier, is emergency support for health and safety crises. So we actually carry 24/7, one of us, we take turns, an emergency cell phone. So we can be reached any time of the day or night, any day of the week, if a crisis was to emerge on one of your programs. So we can help with contacting family members, coordinating with the school, communicating with the Department of State, the embassy, consulate if necessary, and largely we kind of coordinate the campus response that is appropriate to the given crisis. We've proposed a contingency fund to provide financial resources to assist in crisis situations, so that may be for the program leader. Alternate travel arrangements need to be made. If a parent needed to come escort a student home or something like that, those are examples of what that fund could be used for. So we're hoping to get more funding to support with that. And as you can see from the sheet, there are lots of other resources and services that our office can provide. Does anybody have any questions about those? Yes.
Is there, for a newly developed course, is there like a minimum number of students that are required?
So that really depends on the program and the finances. I don't know if you want to say on that topic.
Often it's decided within the school. So typically the school administration will have an expectation of the minimum number of students they want to have to be able to offer the course at all. And then, as a study abroad component, it's typically, there's a financial concern to make sure that the program is self-sufficient. So most of the programs will have a program fee over and above the tuition that will cover all of the students' logistical costs, but also have essentially the faculty costs divided amongst the students. So how many students do you need to have to make your travel costs reasonable? But that being said, there's also kind of the programmatic piece, right? So how many students is it realistic to shepherd through this experience on the ground? So there are programs, maybe a good example is in liberal arts and sociology. There's a program that intentionally matches students, IUPUI students, with students in China to research a topic cross-culturally. And it's pretty time intensive in terms of identifying students on the Chinese side, as well as matching the kind of appropriate topics And so those kind of more intensive designs that aren't just kind of classroom-based experiences would also have those kinds of restrictions on what size makes sense. So that might be kind of what is the maximum number we could accommodate in this kind of experience.
So, is it possible for a staff member to be a program director? Because I noticed it says faculty director. Is that possible?
Sure. That's a great question. So, thank you. It is. We have, we'll say, program leaders, right? That are staff. Those are typically the non-credit programs. But if you are a teaching staff person, that's certainly something. As long as you have the credentials that you need within your school to offer the credits or courses, absolutely. Yeah. So that's something we should change our language around. So thank you for pointing
So if there
that
was a course you're already like instructor for that course, then that could, that could be developed on this type of project.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah. And
What about adjunct faculty? Can they do that or not?
yeah, there have been adjunct faculty that have created study abroad programs. You want to just make sure you have the support of your school. Part of this OSAC approval process would be a letter of support from the chair and dean. And I think with an adjunct faculty member, those letters may be even more important to just kind of demonstrate that that you have their support. And something that you might want to think about too is how do we make this program sustainable? So the hope with any of these programs, a lot of work goes into it. So hoping that it'll be offered more than one time. And so that's something that you might want to think about and talk with the chair and dean about. Not that programs that are explicitly designed for a one-time experience, not that those aren't approved, but in general, there's hope that it would be offered more than one time. Other questions? Let me put this up one thing. Other questions?
Yeah, so for the funding, can adjunct faculty apply for that, the grant funding?
The OBPIA grant is specific for full-time faculty. I don't know about the RISE grant. Does anybody here know about the RISE grant? I know the OBPIA one is for full-time, not necessarily tenure track, but full-time faculty. I can look. Any other questions? Well, I'm going to predict a question that maybe people are thinking about but are afraid to ask. So next step, so if you're interested in developing a study abroad program, I encourage you to reach out to me, so Stephanie Leslie, and there's my email address. Typically, those that are developing programs will meet with me and we'll kind of look at the taxonomy as well as the OSAC proposal guidelines. I didn't mention, but you have a copy of the proposal guidelines in your handouts as well. And we can kind of sit through and kind of brainstorm a little bit. What are you interested in doing? Do you already have a location in mind, or are you kind of exploring? In addition to the resources and kind of talking through that proposal and how to build that, another role that our office can play is helping you identify possible collaborators. So we have a sense of who's doing what, not only at IUPUI, but within the IU system. So we might be able to help you connect with another faculty member that's interested or already doing something similar to what you would like to do. And that, I think, can be really helpful. I personally would like to see more interdisciplinary study abroad programs. I think it makes a lot of sense, educationally, and then also just logistically, right? You can spread the workload around so that you have multiple people, and then also perhaps a broader pool of students to draw on. Yeah, so I invite you to reach out to me. I'd be happy to talk with you to think about developing a program. Anything else? No? Great. Well, thanks so much for coming. As well, so thanks for coming.